So we're going to look a little bit more now at kind of the architecture of Airtable so that you just have a better understanding of how it works and what it is. So it has a wide variety of use cases like we talked about, and we could probably spend a day or two talking about all the different ways you could utilize Airtable. But we all know that there's a lot of other great things you're trying to get to today. So in the next few slides, what I really want to focus on is just giving you a high level understanding of some of that architecture behind Airtable. So whether you want to go in and kind of build a custom tool, or you just want to take advantage of the resources and templates that Airtable already has provided, you'll have a better understanding of kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So what we're looking at now is just a screenshot of a base in Airtable. So in Airtable, we have a base, or a database is what they're shortening that to. And within that database that we're looking at, there are different tables kind of running along the top. You'll see those. And within each table, there are housed records running horizontally. And then within those records, there are fields. And in this case, we're just looking at a list of projects that a team is working on. And each kind of horizontal line item there would represent a project. And then the fields are corresponding to that project. So you might have a due date, a title. These are all, of course, customizable. And what I want to draw your attention to here is this task field. So right now, looking at kind of this database here, you might say this really doesn't look that different than a spreadsheet with just some different, lingo. But what we're going to look at now is kind of the relational nature of Airtable. So I really want to draw your attention to kind of that task field there, and we're going to see this in action. We're going to watch a short video of this at work. So let's say I am ready to add a new project for my team. So I'm going to go in and add literally a new project, very creative title. So again, these fields are all editable. Let's say this project is kind of at its kickoff stage. I'm not too concerned with some of these other details right now. But again, I want to draw your attention to the tasks. So I'm here and I need to set up some tasks for my team. So we're going to start with task A. And as these tasks are being created, you'll see them populate in this field. And again, this may not look that different than maybe a multi-select or a single select field. But what is actually happening behind the scenes is that this field that we're looking at is relationally linked to a different table. So you could consider this maybe the parent table, and then we're heading over to the child table. And there we can see task A and task B at the bottom. We just created those, and they're tied to a new project. So why do we care about this? Why is this important? Well, the ability to create this linkage allows for a couple different things. It allows us to create some more kind of automated workflows and more complex workflows. I'll just start this again while we're chatting. But we're here at a data conference, right? We like good, clean, strong data. So creating this kind of relational database allows data to easily be referenced table to table, and it allows us to create that one-to-many relationship. So again, in this example, we're creating one project that has many things associated, many tasks associated with it. So this allows for that data integrity. It also allows for efficiency. We're not going to multiple places to update one thing. We can, because of that linking, when you update it in one place, it carries over to the other. And then it also allows for flexibility. So as I mentioned, the ability to create more complex automations or workflows in Airtable is really powered by this relational database nature. So as you get into Airtable, that's one of the important things to understand, essentially, is how this relational database is at work. And again, all this is done with no code because it's already built into Airtable. So we talked about the base layer. That's what we're looking at here. The next thing to talk about is interfaces in Airtable. So the interface in Airtable is essentially the user-friendly layer of your data. So if we were in our base, we click on this little interface tab, which takes us out to an interface. And you can see here, here's my new project. And I can change the dates here. I can assign it to someone. I can look at a dashboard that's kind of summarizing my data in a really kind of plug and play way. And so the reason that you would care about an interface is that you can then interact with your data in maybe a more palatable way. So in that first screenshot, we're looking at a lot of line items, a lot of tables. But in this interface, the way it's designed is to help your users just interact kind of at the front end, if you wanted to use a development term, versus that base layer data. So again, We've looked at bases, we've looked at interfaces. Those are kind of the two main places where you're going to add and update data. And I'm not going to spend too much more time on this interface because Michelle is going to show how her team has really kind of dived in and really optimized their interface view. And so you're going to see a great demo of that later. So if you walk away with nothing else from these last few slides, just remember that Airtable is comprised of bases, base data, and then the interface that's a little more front-facing and easier to navigate. There we go. It really doesn't want me to go past this slide. All right. So we talk a little bit about that architecture. Now I want to just share a bit of how we started to customize Airtable. So again, where did this request come from? It came from two data teams that were wanting to build some replicability, transparency, maybe standardization of documentation into their system. And so we had to think through, well, how are we going to build an Airtable to meet those needs? And like I said, Airtable does have a lot of kind of plug and play templates that you can use. But for some of these more complex customizations, we actually had to think through what are some of the building aspects that we need to tackle. So kind of a way that we approached this as I was looking at building this for Erin was to kind of just use a basic cycle of development. And this type of kind of problem solving approach could be used not just for building a database, but obviously for any problem that you're kind of going after to solve with a group of people. So when the request came through to help the Fulton data team kind of rethink maybe how they were tracking, the first step was just to assess kind of what their needs were, what they were hoping to get out of this new tool. If you're going to make all that effort to switch your team over from one process to another, you need to make sure that you're actually going to solve the problems that they're seeking to solve. It also involved kind of connecting with Michelle and seeing what their team was doing in kind of that initial Airtable base and really just trying to gather as much information as possible. From there, we went into kind of a whiteboarding stage. So for me, that was the literal whiteboard in my office. But starting to see, as we saw with Airtable, you do need to do some planning before you build to see what tables do I want linked to what fields, what's going to kind of connect, what needs to stay unconnected. So this brainstorming step, again, whether you're building a database or just solving a problem, is the chance for you to kind of zoom back out, take all the information that you gathered and start to maybe map out the steps that you're going to take to solve your problem. Start making those visual connections. And then from there, the fun part comes with actually building. So I started to kind of make a minimum viable product, again, an MVP, if you want to use kind of a software development term, but really just trying to get Erin, here's like a basic layout of what this could look like. Here are some of the most essential features. Some of the more automations or higher complexity things weren't in this initial round of work, but just to showcase some of those essential features and then just run it back through the cycle. So taking that prototype to her, kind of assessing, hey, does this align? Are we going down the right path? And then also getting more kind of requests as she continued to think about what they really were looking for. So from there, I wanted to just kind of jump back into the base and show you some of these complex automations that we look to build. And again, there's a lot that we could cover here due to kind of the uniqueness of Airtable. But what I want to focus on is really just one thing. One of the problems that Erin's team was seeking to solve was that they had a number of requests coming in. And oftentimes they knew like, yeah, this is, this type of request, we usually do these 5 or 10 things, or this type of request, it usually runs like this. So one of the things that we really sought to solve was how to just create a more replicable process for her team using an automation. So we wanted to reduce that manual effort and increase replicability. So what we're seeing now is kind of a copy of the base that was created. And similar to our last example, there's a project that's being input. In this case, we want to identify what team it's for, make an assignment. And then we're going to head to this type column. And we decided that the type of this project A is going to be a large project. I think that's what I picked. So what we'll see here now is an automation is going to run in the background. And that task field, which earlier I just manually was putting in task A, task B, those automatically auto-populate. A time rating and a difficulty rating automatically populates. And we can see all of those tasks that were just created are living here in this task table, We can make assignments here. We can update. If I say this is complete, that's going to be reflected back out in my base table. So now we can see that that project is 17% complete because that task was marked complete. So once again, this kind of just showcases that relational nature and is a very simple way to kind of replicate work, reduce that manual kind of workload of task creation. And again, you're going to see a more built out example of this from Michelle and her team. So to go into a little bit of how this was created, because you might be curious, this is where the automation comes into play. So once again, we're looking at this automation run. I think we need to, it's struggling. There we go. It's struggling to skip my slides when I have a video. But where this lives out of, we talked about bases and interfaces, or bases and tables. So in this, I created a task template table, and this was part of the work with Erin to define, hey, when you get a request and it's a medium request, what are the steps you want your team to take? Or what is a metric request? Again, this was kind of custom building out these templates, which then could allow the automation to run. So if we click into automations, this is kind of our automation hub in Airtable, and we'll break down how this automation was created. So once again, to review, in Airtable, we have base data, we have interfaces, and those are powered by this automation layer. So just a few screenshots to explain this automation. With every automation, you're going to have a trigger, and that trigger then is going to cause something to happen. So this is the trigger step of that automation. And if we look at kind of the right panel, you'll see the yellow star there. That's to show us, hey, what table are we looking at? So in this case, we were looking at the project's overview table. And then right below that are the conditions. And the conditions for this trigger was, hey, we have a project. The name is not empty. Okay, we called it Project A. The tasks are empty, though. We don't have any assigned here. And the type is not empty. So we went to that step and we picked the large project that now assigned it a type. So that was our trigger action in the project's overview table. And then from there, you'll notice the maroon star, we're looking at a different table now. So we're telling the system, hey, when you see type large, go to the task template table and find type large. And then from there, we're going to actually have an action. And that is going to be executed. You'll see the green star. That's going to be executed in a new table, the live task table. So essentially what it's saying is, hey, go to your task template, find all tasks associated with a large project, and basically replicate them here in our live task table. That's how that creation is going to happen. And there's a lot of different things you can do with this. It can into a much deeper layer if you want to auto-assign people, if you want to auto-assign dates. There's a lot that you can get into it. But again, the goal here is just to start to understand what are some of the processes I'm doing or my team is doing that's repetitive, and that we could start to build out on automation to help reduce that overhead. So we talked about the architecture of Airtable, gave you a little bit of context about how we built it, some of the ways that we wanted to kind of customize it for this team. And I'm really excited to turn it back to Michelle, and she's going to share more about how her team kind of took this and ran with it and implemented out in the wild at Mary Lou Fulton. So back to Michelle.
Thank you. All right, so as Allison and her team were creating this base, Erin gave us a copy of their base, and I was really excited by all that they had been able to put together. And I was convinced that this was the tool that our team really needed to improve our request and project management. However, not everyone on the team was as excited as I was about it. And I think, as you probably all know, when there's a big change that you're asking your team to go along with, you need to consider not only the product, but also the people and the processes that'll need to change and maybe come along and have some buy-in on the change that you want to make. So that's what I'm going to talk about here, the steps that we took to implement this new project management system, but I think they're applicable to a lot of different kinds of change that we may be asking our team to make. So these are the basic steps. And I think the most important thing to remember is to include our team members at every step. This builds ownership, this fosters buy-in, and then this produces a better outcome because we have everyone's input on the final product. So for planning and design, we started at the very most foundational level, which is we knew there might be concerns. We knew some of our team might not really want to make these changes that they were being asked to make. And so we wanted to address those concerns from the outset and kind of share our vision of why we thought this was important to do. So these are some concerns that you might reasonably have. What about all the time we're going to have to put into implementing this new system? We've already got plenty of work to do as it is. Why do I have to adopt these processes? I've been doing it this way all along. It's working just fine for me. And then also the potential for micromanagement. In our case, we were asking our team to start tracking the time that they were spending on each project, and things like due dates and whether we met the due dates that we had set for ourselves. So I think there was some concern about how this information was going to be used. To help allay those concerns, we set out a vision of what we thought could be accomplished by implementing this tool. And in our case, we set it up as a set of guiding objectives to guide both the implementation and the ongoing usage of this new project management tool. So first of all, responsive request management. As the college data team, our whole purpose was to produce timely, accurate data for our stakeholders, for the faculty and the staff at the Teachers College. So that was number one. We felt like we could improve we could be more responsive to the needs of our stakeholders. The second is transparent project management. Anyone on the team should be able to answer questions about any of the projects that we were currently working on, should know what the current status is. If someone needs to hand off the project to someone else, that should be a simple handoff with all of the information already there. Comprehensive project documentation. I think as data people, we all know that documentation and replicability are critical in data projects. And we, rather than having the different pieces in lots of different places, we wanted to have it centralized and comprehensive, both for while we're working on the project and then for future reference in case there were questions or we needed to recreate the project in the future. Actionable work metrics. Again, as a data team, we wanted to be able to track our output. We wanted to know whether we were meeting our deadlines. We wanted to know which departments in our college we were spending the most time supporting. And we wanted to, if in the future we felt like we needed to request additional FTEs, we wanted to have some metrics that could show that we were doing more than we had been in the past and receiving more requests than we had been in the past. And then the final and kind of overarching objective was we wanted to do this with a minimal administrative burden. We wanted to be as time efficient in this process as we could. All right, so back to planning and design. After we had set that foundation, we needed a project plan. We knew we had 3 months to get this done. And so the tool that I used was ChatGPT. And I sat down with ChatGPT. I set a day aside to create this project plan. And I said, you know, this is our starting point. We're a college data team. We need to come up with a better project management system. We've chosen to use Airtable. We have 3 months. And I really went into the nitty gritty. Oh, and I asked it to take on the persona of a project management professional and ask me the questions that a project management professional would ask. And I spent a whole day really collaborating with ChatGPT and putting together this very detailed project plan. I went down to the detail of, I told it the name of the people on our team, how many hours per week they could devote to this project, when they were going to be on vacation. And we ended up with a detailed project plan, a testing plan, and a timeline with milestones for the entire 3 months. It was super useful. Another part of the planning and design is figuring out how we wanted to define the tables and fields and relationships. We had this start with the base from engineering, but we did things a little differently, and we wanted to be able to customize it for the way that our team works. And then as part of kind of building buy-in, we decided to name our base. Everyone put in their suggestions and we voted, and the name that our team came up with is Solstice. So you may hear me talk about Solstice in the remainder of this presentation. That's what I'm talking about, is our team's Airtable base. Development and setup. So after the design, we had to actually get into the base and build those tables, fields, relationships, automations, and interfaces. And then once those were built, we got into the testing. And again, this is where we really needed the help of the team. So we set aside 3 weeks during which everyone on the team agreed to spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day entering projects, collaborating on projects in a test base that we had set up, and going through the workflow that we would from request to project to completion to collaboration every step of the way. This is an example of a test scenario spreadsheet that each member of the team had. Across the top there, you can see the functions that we wanted to make sure got tested. And then along the side, there we go, along the side here, each member of the team selected a number of projects that were typical of the kind of work that they did and that would give them the opportunity to test all of these different functions. And then we tracked the status of all of these test scenarios. If there were any issues, we reported them and addressed them right away. And then we also met weekly and discussed what was working well and what wasn't working well as a team as we went through these scenarios. And we learned a ton. The biggest thing that we learned was to simplify. Airtable allows so much customization and it's so flexible. There are so many different things that you can do that when I was building, I had kind of gone crazy with some of the interfaces and with some of the tasks, and I had made it way more complicated than it needed to be. I had a different interface for every step of the project. And when my team started using that, they said, can't we just have one interface that we can use from beginning to end for a single project? And when we did that, it was so much better. The only exception to that would be, and Allison talked about this a little bit, you can create a lot of really cool, sophisticated, complex automations behind the scenes that will actually make things easier for the users of the base, that will streamline some of the processes and automate some of the processes. And same thing with interfaces. You can do some kind of cool stuff behind the scenes that makes the interfaces easier for your users to use. So again, we're minimizing the administrative burden by doing those things on the back end. All right, the next thing, which is really all along the way, is establishing processes. So we were asking our team to do things in a very different way than they were used to. So we set up some workflow expectations, we tested them as part of the testing process, and then we finalized them at this step. So expectations might be things like when we receive a request, we want to respond within X number of days. When a project is assigned to you, if it's a medium priority project, reach out to the requester within 2 weeks. So those kinds of things. Which fields are required in order to track the metrics that we want to be able to track, and which are optional just if they're helpful to you. And how much time should I spend on tracking projects? These were all the kinds of things that we needed to set up the expectations in our workflow. And then as you'll see, we were able to set up those workflow steps within our interfaces as well. And then the last step is data transfer. So from all the systems we had been using before, we needed to get that data into our new system. And then we went live on August 1st of this year. And make sure that you celebrate that milestone with your team for all the hard work they've done. All right, so to see how it all comes together, I wanted to do a little demo of how we at the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College use Solstice, our Airtable project management system. Let me get my notes here. All right, so just to kind of recap what Allison talked about, in Airtable, we've got data, we've got automations and interfaces. And Allison already talked a lot about the data, and she talked about the automations, and I'm going to show you some of the interfaces and how we use them from request to project to reporting. So first of all, we have a data request form. So faculty and staff in our college have access to this, and at any time they can make a request of our team. So I've got some of the data entered here already. We've got a requester, Sandra Spark, who needs to know how many students are transferring from community colleges in the current term. So this is an interface that we created, and it's connected to the tables and the fields in our Airtable base. This data, we want it on a recurring basis. We want aggregated count. So each of these are a field in our base. I'd really like for it to be a dashboard. We have the ability to attach items. So if they have screenshots, I think this is the kind of dashboard that she's hoping to receive her data on. And then any final comments. Thanks for being so awesome. And then when the requester clicks the submit button, that triggers an automation. And what the automation does behind the scenes is it sends a notification to our team's Slack channel. And the notification says something like, you have received, it says it's from Solstice, and it says you have received a new request from Sandra Spark. Click here to do the intake on this new request. And if you click on that button, it sends you to another interface that we created, which is called the new request intake. And this is just used by our supervisor when we get a new project to determine what should be done with a new request that we receive. So here again, we can see the information that the requester entered. Here's what they wanted. Aggregated counts. Okay, I'm reviewing it. And then there are a few things that you can do. First of all, there's a lot of collaboration ability built into Airtable. So each project and task has the ability to have conversations here. So I could maybe tag Emily on my team and say, I only have one hand, so I'm going to type something really short, but Emily, do we already have a dashboard that will provide this data? And then it will send a notification to Emily with a link back to this project in the base. So she can click on that and come back, and we can have a little conversation within the project itself. So in addition to that, that's optional, but the other thing that has to be done according to our department processes is we need to either assign this new request to a point person or send it to the backlog. And for our department, if we send it to the backlog, obviously that's a request that isn't urgent. We have once a month, we have a team meeting where we review our backlog and decide which of those projects need to be brought forward to be worked that month and which can be waiting for later. So that's part of our responsive request management in meeting the needs of our stakeholders, so we can prioritize those projects that are most important right now, but not lose track of the other ones that are not an immediate need. So in this case, I'm not going to send it to the backlog. I'm going to go ahead and assign this one to Michelle, and I'm going to give it a medium priority. And then when I click this button, again, it triggers an automation. And this automation does a few things, including it emails the requester, and it says, your request has been assigned to Michelle. And then it gives them a customized message based on the priority. So it won't say your project has a low priority, but it'll say, Michelle is currently working on several projects, but she will get to your project at her earliest convenience, or something like that. Or if it's a high priority, it might say something like, she will get back to you within the next 2 days to get the details of your project. So that's all behind the scenes. And then the second thing that happens is it will Slack the point person with a message from Solstice that says, Michelle, you have been assigned a project with a priority medium. So then I would see that, and it would include a link. It would say, click here to review the project. And when I click on that link, it would take me to our main project interface. And again, just to reiterate, each of these interfaces were totally custom made by us for the way our team works. All right, so it would go directly to, if I had clicked on the link, it would go directly to this new project that was just assigned to me. And probably what I would do in this situation is I would go down and again review the request, which is still here in a view only format. So I can't edit the request, what the requester originally sent. So I'll review it. I'll go, okay, yeah, I really need to meet with her. I would schedule an intake consultation maybe for Monday. When I meet with her, I can enter all of the intake information again, right here in the same project, not in a separate document, not work it out via email. It's all right here. So I would enter those notes and then I would send her the specs. Maybe I send them on Tuesday and she responds on Wednesday. And so I have all that information tracked here. The specs have been approved. I can go ahead and start working on the project. To work on the project, I might go ahead and give it a title. Now that I know what it is, I can enter all my project notes here as I go along. I can add comments down here. We can see it already has that comment that was entered earlier. It's tracking along with the project at every step of the way. And I might go ahead and now that I know more about it, I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, this is a medium request, a medium report. So again, you remember Allison showed you the various project types that they had defined. We had different project types for what we do and the Teachers College, and these are the ones that we defined that are attached to that automation that will generate the tasks. So when I select the project type of a medium report, you're going to see those start to populate in. So first it will populate the time and difficulty rating. Hopefully. There we go. And then it will start to populate in those tasks. Now, again, we set up these tasks in line with the workflow that we had created for the way our department does business. So for example, if we look at the planning and specs task, we can see right here, these are the things that we're expected to do in the planning phase, and they're already just defaulted in. We don't have to enter in all of these tasks and subtasks. Now, as I'm working on this project, one of our department procedures is anytime one analyst builds a dashboard, a second analyst has to review it. And previously, we had a Word document that had a dashboard review checklist. So they would go to the Dropbox folder, find that checklist, save it for this particular project in the project folder, maybe do some emails back and forth about who's going to review my dashboard. But with this Airtable system, we can do that all right within the project. So let's see. Second analyst review of product. When I finish my dashboard, I can go ahead and assign this to Emily, and I can send her a message, and I can say, Emily, can you review this? And if I was typing with both hands, I would type a lot more. So it'll send a notification to Emily with a link to this project. She'll click on that. She'll come back in, probably leave me a message. Yeah, I can get that done by Friday. And then she would go into the task, indicate that she started working on it, and she could just go through the checklist, make sure each of these items that our department has agreed makes a good dashboard is in place. If not, she could add some notes of her own. Oh, you messed up here. Can you please fix this, Michelle? And again, she can comment here as well. So we've got that collaboration right within the project rather than in email and in documents and on Slack and multiple different places. When she's done, she would probably message me again, say, I'm done reviewing the dashboard. She would put that she spent an hour on it maybe and mark it complete. So all of that collaboration, documentation, workflow standardization is all within the project itself. So that is a task. I'm going to go back to the project. Another thing that we did to kind of help with all of that transparency and project management is we created a field that we call weekly snapshot status. And so part of our processes in our department is that every week in the morning before our team meeting, everyone updates the status of each of the projects that they're actively working on. And it's just a one-line thing at the top so that our supervisor or anyone, if they want to know what's the status, the current latest status of this project, they can review that. So it's entered here. It's one of the fields in our base. And we created an interface to make it really easy to update that and to review it. So this interface shows all of the projects that I'm currently working on or that I completed in the last week. And because I updated my weekly snapshot status, except for the project I just received, we can see the latest status of each of those projects. And again, this is just another interface that we created for our team. A couple of the things I want to quickly show you, and then we'll open it up for questions. I think the last thing I want to show is that, and Allison kind of showed this as well, that there are some standard kind of charts and graphs and reports that you can put together that you can customize for your team. So these are the number of projects we completed by month. This shows the completed projects by time rating and difficulty rating. And then this red line is the amount of time that we spent on completed projects. And then here we have the different types of projects that we've completed. So we can see we do a lot of small data pulls, evidently. You could also do this by department requesting, by any of the fields that we have within Airtable. Then the average days that we're spending per project. So that's a quick overview. That's how we use it. It's been really useful to our team. And our team, even though they weren't necessarily excited about it at the beginning, they love it now. And everyone agrees that it has made our processes much simpler and more streamlined. So I want to open it up to any questions and just also mention that you can feel free to reach or me. Maybe, I don't know what just happened. Go ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it has a lot of integration capabilities. So Teams or Slack, or you wanted to send an email or all of that. So if your team is utilizing, other communication platforms, you can definitely customize it for that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Dedicated relation to like Apple. Have either of you run into things where you or it's been a bit more difficult? And the second, is it possible for us to get copies of your bases so we can look at them?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us via email. I'd be happy to share a copy. I'll pass to you for the other question.
As far as whether we've run into any limitations, the only limitation I've run into is we have worked with Alteryx to automatically load data up into an Airtable base. And there's like there's a limit on the number of rows you can upload at one time. It's like 10,000 or something. I don't know if anyone knows. So we have a couple projects where we've had to upload stuff in sections. We can't do all the rows at one time. But that's the only limitation that I've run into. Otherwise, it's been able to do everything we've wanted it to do. Thanks. Yeah, in the back. Oh. Thanks for sharing that. And I know there are some kind of standard visualizations within Airtable, and then there's also something called extensions where you can pull in things that other people have created, which I've just started to explore, but it looks like there's a lot more there too. So thanks for giving that example. Yeah. So I should say it took us 3 months to implement after engineering gave us the base that they had already created. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I would say it probably took, I mean, it was because it was so cyclical and iterative. I think it took probably about 2 months to kind of, between all the back and forth of like initial kind of conversations, initial questions. Do you want to use Airtable? Do you want to use Smartsheet? Do you want to use, maybe you just want to do what you're still doing. So I would say it probably took about 2 months to kind of get to a place where it's like, okay, this is now kind of out in the wild. And then pretty soon after that, Michelle's team picked it up and they did a lot more of the interface and all of that building. And size wise, yeah, I'll let you speak to that.
Okay. On our team, I was the project lead for this project. During those 3 months, I might have been spending 15 to 20 hours a week on it. I spent a lot of time on it. My other team members, it was just a few hours a week. So we had 3 other people on our team that were working on it, just to a lesser degree. Yeah, great question. I think we've got just a couple minutes left. Go ahead.